Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. So much going on in the Coberger case, and we have to also remember it's not Coberger, it's the Idaho 4 case. There are 4 victims to this case that we see up on the screen: Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Santa Canodal, and Ethan Chapin. And that's what we cannot lose sight of this case is about. However, there's been a lot of legal maneuvers in this case, and all connected loosely, I think, but all very timely to the Dateline NBC episode that apparently leaked a lot of evidence. Someone leaked it, and it appears that the consensus is the leak came from the prosecutorial side. Many people in true crime, many people that I read all the text messages and everything, many people believe it's from the defense, but the judge and the defense and even Bill Thompson is sort of acquiescing to the fact that it possibly could be from the prosecution. Do they know who the leaker is that violated that gag order that could result in arrest for whoever leaked it? It would be a misdemeanor for contempt of court. But since the gag order is on, leaking evidence to a TV show is just absolutely horrific. It's not good for the case. It's not good for the jury pool. It's not good for anyone except perhaps the public, who is dying to hear the latest on this case. But what did this do? It gave an avenue to Ann Taylor, and we all know about the 40-page continuance that she wrote up, the brief she presented to the court, requesting more time. Do you think this request for more time would have come out even if this Dateline NBC, I'll call it a documentary, hadn't, and if the leak had not happened? I think that the defense would have still requested a continuance and still asked for more time. And folks, after all, it's been 2 years. These 4 horrific murders occurred on November 13th, 2022. So this November will be 3 years. Let that resonate. Let that sort of marinate in your brain, what that means. And if it means something to you, imagine what it means to the families of these victims. Can you imagine what they're going through for 3 years? So my big dissertation today, my big question today is the continuance, is it all about the death penalty? Is that really what it's about? Or does Ann Taylor really need all of this extra time? So we're going to talk about that today. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone, the police off the cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So that was the big question I wanted everyone to ponder. Is this continuance, this 40-page continuance filed by Ann Taylor, is this all about getting rid of the death penalty? Is this all about potentially having the death penalty thrown out? These are the questions that we are presented to us, and not just me, you too, because I want you to think, to critically think about this. This is the argument actually in the continuance, the 40-page continuance. This court has an obligation to uphold Mr. Coberger's constitutional rights by vacating the trial date because defense counsel needs additional time to review discovery and prepare for the complex merits and sentencing phases unique to death penalty cases. This court has an obligation to enforce the constitutional rights of all persons, including the defendant in this, all right? And she cites a case, Brown versus Plata. So this case has, again, the state courts, equally with the courts of the union, rest the obligation to guard, enforce, and protect every right of the accused, right? As detailed in this motion, moving forward with a capital trial in August will infringe upon Mr. Coberger's constitutional rights, as counsel requires more time to review discovery, complete investigations, and prepare for trial. When considering this request for a continuance, the court must weigh the issues against the heightened need for reliability in death penalty cases. This elevated standard is essential because execution is the most irreversible and profound penalty. When the state seeks the death penalty, it imposes an extraordinary burden upon the court itself and defense counsel to ensure the fairness, accuracy, and reliability of the trial and any subsequent sentencing proceeding. With the defendant's life stake, probably they meant to say life at stake, the trial court must be particularly sensitive to ensure that every safeguard is observed. Gregg versus Georgia, she cites, and must take extraordinary measures to ensure that a death sentence is reliably imposed rather than imposed out of whim, passion, prejudice, or mistake. So, again, in this, it appears that is Ann Taylor sort of abdicating whether this will be a guilty or not guilty plea in the regular trial, and she's jumping right to the death penalty? That's what it seems. Could that be a reason where the judge might say, well, in that case, then let's move forward. You've had enough time. You've had 2 years. Were you worrying about your client's constitutional rights 6 months ago, a year ago, a year and a half ago? Now 2 years have gone by and you're right. We're coming up on the wire, and I believe August 11th is set to be the starting date of this trial. And now you need more time? How about the families of the victims? Do they need more time? Or have they had enough time to suffer through this, through the thoughts and the memories and the sadness and the horror of the murder of these 4 Idaho students, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zena Knodel, and Ethan Chapin? Have their families, you think they're requesting for a continuance? Or do you think they want to get on with this and get on with their lives? That's a big question I have. And this matter is all in the hands, of course, of Judge Stephen Hippler. The delay. Why do you need a delay? That is one of the questions I would ask if I was the judge. I would ask, why do you need this delay? And what I think now, and having stepped back and reviewed this, is that this delay is 100% all about the death penalty. take the death penalty off the table, and does Ann Taylor need a continuance? I don't think so. This is News Nation and Banfield. We're going to play. This is on this topic, of course.
Someone just hand Bryan Kohberger a lifeline? Even if an Idaho jury finds him guilty of 4 brutal murders at the University of Idaho, something happened this month that has the potential to take the death penalty off the table in Coberger's upcoming trial. We'll get to the bottom of it next. Could be delayed if the defense team gets its way. And what's worse, the death penalty that prosecutors are seeking if they get a conviction, that too could be in jeopardy. All of this percolating ever since Dateline NBC aired a 2-hour special revealing information and video that no one had ever seen before. Since a gag order has been shrouding this case for the last 2 years, the defense and the judge are mad as hell about it. The defense says it now needs more time to prepare, but is it possible that the death penalty could be taken off the table as a result? Don't forget, 4 students were brutally murdered in their off-campus house, and the stakes could not be higher for Coberger as he fights to stay alive. No one wants a mistrial here, folks. Nobody wants an appeal that could bring everybody.
I just want to say something about the whole appeal thing. If Judge Hippler and the prosecution and every witness does everything correctly in this case, and Bryan Kohberger is found guilty, there will still be an appeal. There's going to be an appeal no matter what. I will guarantee that. This is a death penalty case. Just traditionally, all death penalty cases go on endless appeals. So in essence, and again, Bryan Kohberger is presumed innocent till proven guilty, right? He's presumed innocent. But if after trial he is found guilty and they move on to the death penalty phase and the jury votes to give him the death penalty, that's not the end of it. There will be endless appeals that could last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So it's almost like the death penalty is sort of almost irrelevant. I think they should almost take it off the table and make what's called life without parole, and real life without parole. Not you're seeing people that were sentenced to life without parole getting paroled as they're elderly and infirm, and all of a sudden the criminal justice system is sympathetic to them. In a case like this, it has to mean life without parole. Give him 500 years if he's convicted to make sure that he never, ever gets out. But the death penalty really complicates matters. And I think that's what this continuance is really all about, is about the death penalty in this case.
Buddy back for a retrial down the road. Here with me to discuss is Brian Enton, News Nation's senior national correspondent, and also Edwina Elcox. She's a criminal defense attorney who practices in Boise, Idaho. Hi, you guys. Okay, Brian, I want to start with you because I was thinking about this over the last couple of days. I saw the interview that you did with Edwina 2 days ago, and no, you and I have been talking since. I remember Lori Vallow's case and how simple the mistake was that the prosecutors made that cost them the death penalty. They handed over discovery on a date that ended up being 1 day late because the rule was before this date, not on this date. And because it was before this date, not on this date, and the discovery landed on this date, the death penalty went away. So I'm just very concerned if there's some comparison to be made between Vallow and what we're seeing in Idaho.
I mean, you make a good point, Ashley, is that all it takes is one very, very tiny screw up, a procedural screw up for the judge to make a decision to take the death penalty off the table. And that is what we saw with the Lori Vallow case. It was just such a small little thing. You mentioned it. They asked for discovery before a certain date, handed it over on that date, and it ended up being considered a day late, and they threw that out, and then they ended up throwing out the death penalty. So they have to be so careful with every little thing, which could be a reason that the judge may decide to delay the trial. Why take any chances? They can get through some of these other issues that have popped.
Judge Hippler has been a pretty strong judge throughout his tenure with this case. And let's not forget that Judge Stephen Hippler, is the second judge to have this case. The first judge was from Latah County, Judge John Judge. That was actually his name. And he made the decision to grant the defense's motion for a change of venue. And that's why the case is now in Boise, Idaho, under Judge Stephen Hippler. But Judge Stephen Hippler is really what you would consider a no-nonsense judge. He's not easily intimidated. We saw a lot of the motions that the defense has made during this entire case, with Ann Taylor being the lead attorney. And it's been a lot of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. The whole thing about there being a potentially second an alternate suspect. Remember that? She raised that new defense. Has that been presented yet? Because I think Judge Stephen Hippler said, you're not raising that unless you have real solid evidence that there is a second potential perpetrator, an alternate suspect, as you say. So Judge Hippler didn't immediately say, oh, yes, bring it on. Bring it on. That's something that we're definitely going to consider, So that alternate suspect presentation is part of all of this. And as we said today, and our sort of whole premise today is the 40-page continuance. Is it all about the death penalty? Is it all about getting the death penalty off the table? And in my dissertation here, yes, I believe it is all about that, because they're more concerned with that right now. Perhaps Ann Taylor is like, let me see if I can first save your life by getting the death penalty thrown off the table through legal maneuvers, and then I'll worry about the trial, whether you're innocent or guilty. So let me first get the death penalty thrown out. Is that her intention? Is that a possibility? Will Judge Stephen Hippler do that? I don't know. That's what I believe this is all about right now.
Popped up with the Dateline leak. He hasn't made a decision yet. Defense just filed their 40-page motion asking for the delay. We haven't heard anything from the judge yet.
The delay I can understand, but my God, what if this massive curative action were taken? I don't know. Edwina, you practice in Idaho, and Bryan just described it. What caused it to go south in the Vallow case was just one day, a screw up of one day of discovery. You could arguably say in Bryan Kohberger's case that a leak of all that information to Dateline is a lot bigger than a one-day discovery violation, and that cost the death penalty for the Vallow case. Do you see it as a potential curative measure in the Coberger case, taking death off the table?
I do agree with your characterization that this seems to be so much bigger. I think the more likely path that the court takes is granting the request for a continuance versus taking the death penalty off the table in Coberger's case. Obviously, the defense has pursued this avenue to get the death penalty off the table, albeit for a different legal remedy and route. But I think the greater likelihood is that the trial gets continued versus the death penalty gets completely taken off the table here.
Don't you think that Brian's lawyer there on the right with the blonde hair and Taylor has some ammo here to go to the judge and say, look, I have come to you before with these requests and you have shot them down. Now I'm coming to you with a request to take the death penalty off the table because this infringement on his rights, right, of a jury pool that's not poisoned, this gag order that was so egregiously violated by the government, because the government were the only people in possession of the information that got leaked. Don't you think she has a case to be made and that the judge may have to back down?
She does have a case to be made, but when we look at the briefing, what the remedy that they seem to be requesting here, not seem to be requesting, it's absolutely what they're requesting, is a continuance time. And the case law that's cited in that briefing, there's a lot of case law cited, but the argument that the defense, Ms. Taylor, seems to be making is what we need is space and distance between this, what can only be characterized as a completely egregious leak. But that seems to be what they're requesting, not that it's completely taken off the table this time around.
So very interesting. Of course, Ashley Banfield was pushing to say that that the whole death penalty thing will be thrown out by Judge Hippler because of these violations of the gag order, the Dateline NBC show. But Edwina, I believe her name is Edwina Elcox, a local defense attorney, says, no, what this is all about is the continuance. They want more time. They want to put more time between the Dateline NBC show, which could taint an entire jury pool. And are they really worried about that? I guess they are. But so the continuance, according to many, think that it is all about the death penalty. But according to this local attorney, Edwina Elcock, she believes that, no, it's all about the continuance. They want more time for preparation. They want more time for strategy. They want more time to go over the evidence, which is voluminous. They may even try to get some of the evidence suppressed, maybe some that was given to Dateline NBC that now is out there for everyone to see. The biggest thing, I believe, is the defense is not ready. They are not ready. And why aren't they ready? The defense has had 2 years. 2 years. So is this just a stalling factor? Why are they not ready to go? And many of you may say, because the prosecution has all the money of the state and they can take their time. They have unlimited resources. That's not true of the defense. So the defense needs more time. That's what they're talking about. This is again from News Nation.
In the high-profile trial, which is scheduled to start on August 11th. Coberger is charged with killing 4 students at the University of Idaho in 2022. He could face the death penalty if convicted, but he continues to maintain his innocence. His attorneys now say a recent Dateline episode may have violated the judge's gag order, potentially tainting the jury pool. The special reportedly included unreleased details about the case. Now, in response, the judge ordering both sides to identify anyone who may have had access to that leaked information. Joining me now, News Nation senior national correspondent Bryan Kohberger. Bryan, a pleasure to have you as always. So what does the defense say the Dateline episode revealed that we didn't already know, that the public didn't already know?
Yeah, this is pretty crazy, Henna. I mean, this was a bombshell Dateline episode. Remember, there is this very, very strict gag order on the case. Almost no information has leaked out since the very, very beginning, besides the basics that were in the probable cause. A couple of weeks ago, Dateline has this episode. They've apparently got a law enforcement source. They had access to Bryan Kohberger's cell phone. They had text messages. They had his call log. They had photos out of the cell phone that they showed showed in the episode, they even had surveillance video from outside the house where the murders happened, showing a car that prosecutors have said is Bryan Kohberger's car going to the house around the time of the murder. So a massive leak. The judge in the case is even now considering appointing a special prosecutor to the case to try to figure out who the leaker is. They've ordered all of the law enforcement involved and the prosecutors and defense to save all of their records and text messages and emails, trying to figure out who may have been communicating with the media. So it's a big deal. And for that reason, the defense is now saying that they want to delay the trial.
Brian, how's prosecution responding to the leak allegation? And of course, now the motion for a delay.
So they haven't responded yet. Basically, the defense filed this motion end of last week. It was about 40 pages long. We're expecting the prosecution to respond this week and then the judge to make a decision. Will the trial still go on August 11th or will they end up pushing it? But this is not good for the prosecution. I mean, you've got someone on the inside, someone in law enforcement who has now leaked out all of this very, very secret information. And the defense is saying, hey, look, we can't go forward with the trial until we know who the leaker is. It's just not fair to make us move forward at this point.
So let's not forget with this case, all right? And I've said it on prior shows. First, we had the book by Howard Bloom. We all remember that book where he was on every single talk show. When the Night Comes Falling, it was called, by Howard Bloom. So that's the first book that was written. And he also put chapters on the magazine Airmail. So a lot of prejudicial information has already been out there. Howard Bloom doesn't have to abide. He's a journalist. He doesn't have to abide by the gag order, except one of the things is that people that are involved in the case aren't supposed to speak with him, law enforcement, attorneys, that type of thing. The other thing is James Patterson, the famous author James Patterson, is coming out with a book in July, right before the start of this trial. He's not subject to the gag order. Now, is that also going to poison the jury pool? Yes, but there's nothing they can do about it. That's just the reality of a free society, all right? The other thing was how much more information came out through a legal process, the legal process being that it came out in the hearings, you know. Bryan Kohberger's selfie, Bryan Kohberger's hooded picture, the scary picture where he looks like the Grim Reaper that I have on the screen right now, right? All of those things came out via legal documents that were presented to the court, so they became public information. And let's not forget the famous or infamous selfie that I have on the screen right now with his left thumb extended into the air. That was taken on the morning of November 13th, the morning of the murders at 10:31 hours. So all of those things are also prejudicial to a jury, isn't it? But it's already out there. It's already out there. So will Judge Stephen Hippler, will he throw out the death penalty over the leaks that resulted in Dateline NBC doing the documentary on this case? Will he throw it out over that? We heard defense attorney Edwina Elcox, a local defense attorney, say, no, it's not about that. What it's about is the continuance, the fact that the defense wants and needs more time. So we will see. There should be some rulings being put forth this week. And it'll be interesting to see what Judge Hippler does. So that's a little bit of a snippet today, folks. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in this morning. So many interesting things occurring in this case. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.